This video is brought to you by Audible.com. Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and today we'll be taking a look at the modern-era Call of Cthulhu adventure Viral. Written by Alex Guillotte and Bud's RPG Review, the scenario was published in 2022 under the Miskatonic repository. While I've not personally run this scenario, I have played it. Bud ran a group of us through it while it was still being playtested, and I am listed among the playtesters. Coming in at a whopping 108 pages, the scenario initially appears unwieldy huge. However, once you remove the maps and the pre-generated characters and the numerous handouts, it's only 42 pages long, and it's designed to be playable in just 4 to 8 hours, with tips on how to streamline that down to a single 4-hour session for a convention one-shot, or expanding that out to 3 or more sessions for longer play. The adventure focuses on a team of ghost hunters, the Spectral Crew, who intend to live-stream their exploration of an abandoned Italian hospital in hopes that their stream will go viral and break them above 1 million subscribers. We get 5 pre-generated characters, each with their own secrets and agendas. This is a great cast of characters. We also get a blank Spectral Crew character sheet if a keeper wants to write up any additional or alternate characters to use. So when you playtested this, which character did you play? I was the douchey host and leader, Marco Proudfoot. Total ass, I love him, he is great. So Bud was all, "Hey Seth, I think you'd be perfect to play this superficial and overdramatic jackass who's completely obsessed with making his next subscriber goal." Yeah, Bud thought that... Wait a second. One of the questions that I frequently receive, and I need to do a whole video on this topic, is modern technology in Call of Cthulhu games. Many keepers mistakenly believe that things like cell phones and the internet detract from the kinds of investigative adventures that they can enjoy giving to their players, just because, the characters would now have, too much of an edge. Viral, however, embraces modern technology. It's essential for the adventure itself, working both for and against the player characters. It also is being used as a fantastic means for keepers to help keep the game on track while not railroading or taking away from the player's agency, and this is a fantastic example of how to do a modern-day adventure right, and we had a lot of fun playing it. However, I do have a few thoughts on ways that this adventure can be improved, so what I'm going to do is offer my tips, my criticisms, and my suggestions as someone who has successfully played this adventure. Hey, and I'm Jack the NPC of Spectral Crew, going to the places and doing the things that you would never do. Now normally I'm here to give it to you from a player's side of things, but since Seth's already got that one covered, I'm mostly here to tell jokes as we get to find out about a brand new mythos deity, while also learning all the dangers of putting yourself out there on the internet. But first, let me talk to you about Audible. As many of you know, I am an author, and all of my books are available as audiobooks. 2 of them are even Audio Award finalists for Best Paranormal Audiobook. I've turned down dozens of sponsorship offers for my channel, and the reason being is they're never for anything that I personally use. However, I use and have used Audible for many years. This is my personal Audible library of over 200 audiobooks that I've listened to since 2014, and Audible has over 200,000 titles to choose from, and with apps for both Apple and Android, you can listen to them anywhere. So whenever I'm driving or going to the gym or running errands or just doing chores around the house, I'm always listening to an audiobook, and you can get a free audiobook and a 30-day trial of Audible at audibletrial.com/Skorkowski, link below. I highly recommend them as a very satisfied customer. And while you don't have to get one of my books as your free audiobook, that is also an option for you. Now back to the video. But first I must warn you that there will be spoilers. So any players in the audience, please stop here. But send your game master this way to see if Viral is right for you. But if you keep going and you spoil yourself, you'll be haunted by that forever. Okay, keepers, let's get this thing started. The backstory is that millennia ago, a microscopic elder god of disease and pestilence called Hastalik fell to Earth from the endless void of space, landing on a small island off the Sicilian coast. His influence caused Bronze Age settlers to erect a temple above the swirling charnel pit where this god dwelled. As centuries passed on, this cult lived on, changing forms with the times, whatever religion was popular at the time, while spreading the disease. In the 14th century, it became a monastery of St. Roche, taking lepers and plague victims. By the 20th century, it had become a sanitarium and hospital. Finally, in 1954, the Italian government discovered the horrific cases of abuse and murder that were going on at the hospital, and the cultist staff fought back against their raid. But before they were defeated, they laid the groundwork for this god's long-awaited rise. And fearing any possible infectious diseases that might be on the site, the Italian government then placed the island on indefinite quarantine, or at least that's what the official story about it states. Reports and even a book were suppressed by the Italian government, even Google Earth images are blurred, concealing the island's details, and all the while Hastalik has bided his time, waiting for the stars to be right to give birth to his final form. Fast forward to present day, a team of YouTube ghost hunters called the Spectral Crew are nearing the 1 million subscriber mark. Through some shady means, they've learned about the island, and they've flown down to Italy hoping that a live-streamed exploration of this island will be able to push their subscriber numbers above the 1 million threshold. For them, we're given 5 PCs: our on-air talent, a psychic who's secretly a fraud, our cameraman who's secretly a psychic, as well as our technicians. This is a great group of player characters, and we had a ton of fun playing them. There's also Maya, our eyes-in-the-sky NPC, who's safely off-site and handling the stream from England. She's going to communicate through phone and messenger, but is not physically present at the hunt. Now, keepers have several handouts that they can give to their players at the very beginning, and several of them are recommended that you might want to give them to your players a few days before the game, such as tips on ghost hunting, which includes some recommended viewing of different ghost hunting videos, an email from their leader Marco gushing about what their big 1 million subscriber ghost hunt is going to be, and then an email from Maya about the island itself and the boat driver that she's found to take them out there, and some instructions on setting up the stream relay. We also get some research notes about our bogus psychic has made in order to make some believable visions, though I wish that this note was typed out, making it easier for the player to read. We get Marco's script for the video opening to be done on site, and notes and rules for the site for a legitimate but secret psychic to use. We also get a copy of an unblurred island map that Maya has acquired, which has notes about where to set up the Wi-Fi repeaters and the planned schedule of the different locations they're supposed to visit. Now, at this point, I suggest that you also give them the typed out planned schedule, which isn't a handout, but I think really does work better for this, and it really spells out all the planned locations and times, including the midnight session with the Ouija board and the planned pickup time that the boat driver is supposed to come back and get them. However, if a keeper is going to be running this one as a single session, just shorter adventure, they might, instead of giving them this map, give the players the keeper map, which doesn't have any notes about the planned schedule, but does mark the locations and where the right Wi-Fi repeaters need to be placed around the island. Now, of course, if you do give the players the full planned out schedule of all the locations that they're supposed to visit, and then it ends up that they skip a few of them, that is perfectly fine to do. You can even have Maya, quip to them about how no plan survives first contact with the enemy, and how this happens all the time, no worries at all. But she is going to be stressing to them the midnight Ouija board reading in the crypt, because that's something that they promoted to all their fans as the big event, the big finale to the whole thing, as well as the pickup time that they're supposed to get picked up from the island, because those 2 times are critical and non-negotiable. And of course, as the adventure is progressing on, she can email or message or just call them on the phone, little reminders, and maybe tell them that, hey guys, we don't have time to visit the mass graves or the cremation pit or whatever different extra sites that you wish for them to maybe miss for this adventure, because it might be going on a little bit long. Holy crap, enough with all the handouts. Can we just get on with the adventure now? Just one more. The final opening handout is for the crew's tech and director. He's got 3 iPads that have been set up on some sort of chest harness. One is showing the dedicated chat with Maya, another shows all the camera feeds, and the third shows the live stream chat, including the super chat donations and the current subscriber count. These chats are critical for this game because they allow the keeper to tempt or influence the group, offering them money to do something, or maybe calling them chickens or declaring fake at certain events. That way they have to kind of prove this is real, or having their subscriber count rise and fall depending on whatever it is that the player characters do. I'm going to tell you right now that the ability for a keeper to control these chats and show the player characters what the audience's mood is, as well as maybe bribe them with the occasional super chat donation, as well as maybe offer a little hint every now and then of something the player characters might have missed, such as, what was that? I think I saw something. Maybe even offer a little help with a translation of something if the player characters missed their role. or maybe even a bad translation, because it is coming from a stranger off the internet, it is the greatest Game Master tool ever. Our characters got so obsessed with keeping our fans happy that we did all kinds of stupid crap to keep them entertained. It added a whole new dynamic to the game, and it was fan-freaking-tastic. The adventure opens after the player characters have already arrived in Italy. They've gotten all their B-roll footage of the nearby town, and the locals have a holiday going on tonight that's called the Night of the Plague, where all the townsfolk lock themselves indoors at sunset, and this allows the investigators to get out and about unseen. So the adventure begins as the player characters are riding a boat with a shady fisherman to the island, and this fisherman can explain to them how there's several mines that are left over from the Second World War, making this journey by boat dangerous, which that may or may not even be true. As the island draws near, our psychic character has a vision, a foreshadowing for later on in this module. Now, one thing with this site is while it does refer to precognition, one thing that I wish this stated, or keepers should definitely advise to their psychic players, is that the future is not guaranteed. This is just simply the most likely outcome given the current state of events. And the reason being is that this is a role-playing game, not a novel, and the players still have the ability to change the course of events. So when you ever give somebody a future vision, I don't like the idea that it could be something that the player characters have no ability to change, because that kind of does take away their agency. They get dropped off on the smaller of the two islands, and it's become a bit of a party spot over the years. There's graffiti and fire pits, empty bottles, used syringes, and condoms lying everywhere about. Now, one thing is the character Peter is a recovered heroin addict, and while the needles and the heroin and OD victims are mentioned in this adventure, it never links those directly to Peter. So maybe keepers have the investigators discover somewhere on the island some heroin, maybe inside the hospital, or maybe through a bout of madness after that, Peter might have a relapse. Or Hastalik could use Peter's addiction to maybe manipulate or incapacitate him at some point. Or maybe if Peter goes temporarily insane and he comes across some heroin, he might have to do a POW check or something like that in order to resist the urge to use. Of course, if it's going to be something that's found on the island itself, it's going to be up to the keeper to decide if those drugs have been corrupted by Hastalik or not. All this stuff with signs of partying and drug use, that started getting us worried that we might run into a drug addict somewhere on this island. So when stuff started getting weird and we'd hear strange sounds or see dark forms moving up the hallways and that sort of thing, we were more worried about getting stabbed than we were about anything supernatural. Once the investigators have set up their antenna at the old lighthouse, they should head on over to the bridge linking it to the main island. It's here that the Spectral Crew begins their stream at 9 o'clock, which this is when Marco uses his opening script that was given to him at the beginning of the game, which I really encourage you to go ahead and have the player perform this exactly the way Marco would. Now, stepping across the bridge, the investigators might notice half-buried mosaic, and brushing away the dirt, they're going to reveal an elder sign beneath. Now, the module says that this thing has been here forever, and no one knows who even put it here in the first place, but it is going to be able to stop Hastalik or any of Hastalik's corrupted from being able to cross the bridge off to the second island. But one idea that I have here is that have the sign, instead of being very ancient, nobody knows who put it there, have it be where this sign and maybe several other signs on the main island, like 6 of them in total, essentially trapping the elder god on this island, instead of those being ancient, have them where they were placed here by that secret division of the Italian government that's aware of what's going on. So if the investigators, they scrape away all the bits of colored glass and plastic off this little mosaic that they found, they're going to find that it's this 1,000-pound granite disc that's clearly 20th century make, and might even have some sort of government markings on it in one corner, which now makes it this really strange thing that the government would have put this here. Of course, you could be like us and totally miss that thing altogether. I mean, yeah, sure, we saw it. We were like, oh, hey, check it out, an old mosaic down in the dirt. But we're in Italy, and I think mosaics grow around here, so we didn't think much of it at all. After all, we hit on ghosts, not artwork. Now from here, the adventure is pretty wide open as far as what can happen. And while they do have a planned schedule of events, the only set item that it has on there is the midnight seance at the crypt. So keepers are probably just going to have to go with the flow as the police PCs explore, and they just do whatever it is that they want to do and ignore the schedule entirely. We have several locations around the hospital, each have their own little possible visions that we might give for our psychic character, and the keepers also have a list of possible phenomenon or spooky encounters that they can drop in or to spice things things up. And while they can simply choose something from this list, they can also roll. But it asks for the keeper to roll a d12, the one polyhedral die that the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game doesn't even use. Well, it's a good thing that Q Workshop made you add a d12 to your RPG Icons dice set. Otherwise, anybody using your dice set wouldn't be able to play this adventure. And in case you're wondering, yeah, he really did tell Q Workshop that they didn't need to include a D12 in it because none of the games I play use D12s. They totally saved your ass by denying that. Now, one thing that's weird is the adventure gives us a planned order of locations that the player characters should visit. However, the module is not organized in the same order. So while the player characters are going from the grove to the cremation pit to the mass graves and then on to the hospital, the keeper is now flipping back and forth in the book. So I wish the locations were in the same order as the scheduled list that the game gave to the players. Now, while I'm on this, each of the locations has at least one handout for the director to show what's going on his iPads, including the chat. I really dig this aspect to it, but the thing is with these handouts, they come with a running total of subscribers and the running total of super chat donations, which are steadily going to be going up over the course of the stream. However, if your players don't do the locations in the planned order, then those totals are going to be wildly fluctuating around, going up and down and back up and kind of all over the place here. So keepers, you might want to adjust these handouts before the game, maybe remove the super chat and the subscriber numbers from them and just simply, tell the players what they are. Or one of the things that the module suggests is, maybe you're messaging the players what they are, but you probably don't want to put them on this handouts just because the players, if they don't do it in the exact order that the module's recommending, those are going to start kind of going all over the place. Now, the hospital itself is the main location, and there is a ton of cool stuff here to explore. There's also a sign of bullet damage and spent brass from the government raid of 54, and everything was left as is after the raid. So there's going to be a ton of great stuff for the PCs to dig through and explore here. We get maps of the building with some areas that are described. However, I do have a couple criticisms of this. First, I wish the room numbers were in a different color palette than the map itself is, just to help them stand out a bit more. Some of the locations, like location I, that took me a while to find that. One tiny complaint is with location C, the laundry ward. There isn't a C on the map. It's just called the laundry ward, which shouldn't be a big deal, but as I was scouring the map looking for a C for just forever before I realized that they'd labeled it by the full name of the location, but I didn't see that label because my eyes were searching the page for a capital C. To save space and avoid some needless repetition, descriptions for the upper floor wings are pretty much the same as they are for the lower ward, so it simply refers keepers to go to the description for the lower floor rooms, such as if you're wanting to read the description for room 2E, just check out the description for 1J. I simply wish they'd added the page numbers there, such as IJ on page 32, which saves the keeper the trouble of having to flip or scroll through the book searching for information. Also, I really wish that the PDF was hyperlinked. Now, none of these are full-blown complaints, but they're really just little nits, and I'm a firm believer that a module should do everything that it can to help a game master be able to use it fast and easily in-game. So all of these things are just little things that can help speed the game up. That way the game master is spending less time searching through the book trying to find something, which is a billion times more stressful when they're actually doing this in the middle of the game and they got the players looking at them trying to get the answer for whatever it was that they asked. So I really like anything it can to be able to diminish that. That way keepers can just kind of quickly, easily get to everything they need and just keep the game running smoothly. Now, one area that they might discover is a secret door that leads to a shrine where the cultists did their nefarious deeds, like medical experimentation. Now it's in here that they're going to discover the body of a long-dead cultist who, during the raid, he and another plague monk had made the preparations for their god's eventual rising. So one of those plague monks was hanged above the charnel pit as the final sacrifice, and once that was done, the other one returned to this chapel and he shot himself, completing the ceremony. Now, there is a mythos tome that the player characters can find here that explains all the details of the ceremony, but those things take quite a long time to read, and the investigators, they're doing a live stream right now, they probably aren't going to be making all the language rolls and taking all that time that's required to check it out and learn what's going on. So what I recommend here is have it when they find this body, there's a note beside him, something that he left for any cultist that might not have been captured by the government. If they come back here, they can find this, and some sort of note that says, the final sacrifice is complete for Hastalik's rising, or something like that. Which the player characters, when they see this, they're probably going to assume that this guy's suicide was the final sacrifice, but it does help foreshadow what it is they're going to find later on. You want foreshadowing? Then try this. Those monks had calculated when it was that their dark god was going to rise. So inside the room, the player characters find this table with all of these star charts and calendars under a layer of dust. So when they wipe them off, they see that today's date is circled in red as the date that it was going to happen, written almost 70 years before the player characters entered the room. Also, the module says that the dead Plague Monk's revolver is empty, but I say you go ahead and leave the 5 other cartridges in here, but maybe require that the player characters give a handgun or a mechanical repair roll in order to clean it. Otherwise, if they don't clean it, maybe have a luck roll for each shot to make sure the gun doesn't jam up or blow the cylinder out on them. But whatever it is that they're going to face later on, 5 bullets isn't going to make much of a difference, but it can give the player characters a lot more confidence because now they're armed against whatever they're going to be facing. Now, during this whole exploratory portion of the grounds and the hospital, game masters have a lot of stuff that they can throw at their players to keep the game interesting as far as what it is they can find and what it is they can do here. Now, some of those might include sighting of the Plague Monk's ghost that's been able to orchestrate this whole thing for the awakening later tonight. There's also stunts that the characters might do to appease their audience, depending on what the audience asks for. Oh yeah, at one point we looked up this hallway and we saw this huge cloud of black flies coming towards us, and we were like, screw that, we are not going that way. And all of a sudden the chat just blew up with all these people going, fake, it looks like CGI, or people calling us chickens, and all of a sudden our subscriber numbers started going down. So we marched right up into that cloud and had bugs crawling all in our clothes and our ears and our hair, turned around to the camera and we said, we are Spectral Crew, we do the things that you would never do. And that's when the donations came raining in. Totally worth the sanity loss. There's several optional or floating things, such as discovering an old reel-to-reel audio tapes, or even a dropped VHS camera recorder that a team of explorers from the 1980s left behind. Now, one thing, though, that I do suggest adding to the different clues that you can drop in wherever you want is that in the backstory it mentioned that there was a book written about the cult of the 1950s raid, but the author was arrested and the copies of that book were seized before it was released. So I suggest that when they find that bag with the VHS camera, or maybe somewhere else in this entire place, they can find a copy of this book that somehow managed to avoid destruction when the government was seizing them all, like it was an advanced review copy or something like that. And somebody got that and it inspired them to come out to this island where they then later died. But it can be a good way for the keeper to insert some of the background into the adventure for the characters, and more importantly for the players to discover before the adventure's done. Now, another floating encounter is Emily. There is 2 ways that the module suggests using her. She can either be a super fan stalker who's obsessed with one of the player characters and she's somehow managed to get here, meaning that she's actually bribed Maya to find out wherever they are. Or she could be a member of a rival ghost hunting team that arrived on the island the day before, trying to snipe the Spectral Crew's hunt here. Now, either way, she's been on the island long enough that she's been fully tainted by Hastalik's corruption, so she's going to try to join the investigators and attempt to lead them in order to witness the final sacrifice, which is going to signal Hastalik's rise. Now, one thing with this rival ghost hunting option that you can have is it says how she's the only survivor of her group, and then she dumped the bodies into the charnel pit and tossed the camera equipment out to the sea, and due to Hastalik's control over her, she doesn't remember any of that. And all she remembers is waking up and her group is gone. So my idea is, if you decide to use Emily in this way, is have it be where there was something that she missed when she was gathering up all the equipment, like a single remote camera that one of her team had mounted somewhere and that she didn't even know about. So the player characters, they might be able to discover this camera, wherever it was placed, and if they, look into it, they can see footage of Emily, dragging her friends down some hallway, and one at a time, trying to figure out what the hell that was about. And I think that's kind of a pretty good foreshadowing of what could possibly happen, and kind of lead to a nice little bit of drama, as it's obvious that she's lying to him, even though she's insisting that she's not. Now, what's going on here is Hastalik's intelligence and power have grown to the point they can access the internet, and he's the one who, through various tips and manipulations, has convinced the crew to come out to the island on this particular holiday night. He's been behind the whole thing. He's also one of the viewers that's in the chat who might offer large sums of money to coax the crew into doing the various things that he might need. So keepers can have him at one point take over the live stream and impersonate Maya. Now, characters might notice that she's an imposter if they use a hard idea roll, but it would also allow a regular psychology roll to notice this change. Both Karina and Enoch have very high psychology skills and actually have a better chance of getting a regular psychology roll than a hard idea roll. So if you are going to do that, I'd recommend you allow the option of them just using psychology. Now, being in Hastalik's presence is corrupting, and each character is going to be getting tainted by that. Things like interacting with certain things or suffering a bout of madness each earns the character 1 point of taint exposure, which the sheets allow you to track that. Each level of taint, the character becomes more and more sick. So at level 9, their skin erupts and all these leaking boils, but at level 10 taint, they recover completely. However, Hastalik's corruption at this point is too deep, and it's now impossible to resist his control, which is why Emily, who has a taint of 10, is fully Hastalik's slave now.
Wow, this video is definitely the record holder for the number of times that you have said taint, a word that makes me giggle every single time.
Now, speaking of Bouts of Madness, one thing that I do love about this adventure is it offers us a Bouts of Madness table, various hallucinations, and other effects that fit with the adventure's theme and material, so a huge thank you for that. I love having customized Bouts of Madness tables. Now, meanwhile, the Italian government has been monitoring this stream, and they're scrambling for their response in case things get out of hand, including they're going to be contacting the British government because that's where Maya's located, so when everything goes bad, the investigators, right before it does, they might hear police storming in through Maya's door, or she might warn them about, some sort of notice that she got about some sort of airstrike that's on its way before she gets cut off. Now, eventually the player characters are going to enter the crypt for the special midnight seance, and the Ouija board's going to make contact with the plague monk spirit, then begin moving on its own without anyone touching it. It's going to spell out Hastalik's name, and the ground is going to begin shaking, and the building above them is going to collapse, sealing the characters inside, but this huge crack opens up in the wall, allowing the player characters to hopefully try to escape through the catacombs.
Look, guys, I know that we're trapped down here and our feed to the outside world got cut and you're worried that we're gonna die, and yeah, that definitely does stink. But we just made a documented encounter with an actual freaking ghost, and we hit 1 million subscribers, so we're at least gonna die famous.
Now, passing through this enormous crypt, the characters are eventually going to reach an ancient temple. The body of the plague monk is hanging above a churning charnel pit in the floor. The corpse is going to lift its head towards the player characters and then drop from the top down into this pit, allowing them to witness this final sacrifice. The earth begins shaking, and then from the stewing pit, Hastalik begins to rise.
Ah! Wait, hold on. Ah! Oh yeah. If I survive this, this is definitely going on my Instagram.
Now, at this point, all the rotting corpses, thousands of them that have been buried in the crypt and buried throughout this entire island, they all rise up and they begin shuffling towards Hastalik, merging with him and causing him to grow as each one enters him. Now, the player characters, they're going to have to make a POW check and using their taint score as a modifier to resist this urge to join them. But characters that have a taint of 10 are going to automatically fail this and willingly offer themselves to this growing abomination. Now, instead of just merging with Hastalik or being absorbed with Hastalik, I think it'd be a lot more grotesque if as these characters are approaching it, or all these kind of walking corpses are approaching it, they just kind of quickly broke down with some sort of high-speed disease, like they suddenly vomit blood and all their organs suddenly liquefy and they come pouring out their bowels or other openings, and boils kind of pop up along their skin and then just erupt in this kind of explosion of ooze, and it kind of leaves them this puddle, this gross little puzzle that then kind of flows along the floor towards Hastalik's growing form. So especially if you've got Emily with them, she looks perfectly healthy, and suddenly her eyes go all blank and she begins chanting Hastalik's name and walking towards them, and then just kind of explodes with, high-speed Ebola.
Holy crap, man, what the hell is wrong with you? I lost sanity just listening to that.
At this point, the characters can try to escape. There's some openings that have been caused by the most recent earthquake, there's a couple ways they can get out of here and they don't all have to go the same way. Now, Hastalik hasn't noticed them yet. He's still just, pretty happy that he's finally, bigger than a little microbe, but he's eventually going to notice them and he's going to begin chasing them. So if the player characters can make it across the bridge with the Elder Sign, it is going to stop him cold, and they're going to witness this essential force field that's holding him within this island. However, their victory is going to be short-lived as he notices the Wi-Fi repeater that they set up there. So he's going to start transforming himself into millions of flies and begin pouring himself into this Wi-Fi repeater. And then all these flies are going to suddenly start erupting out of the player character's equipment at the lighthouse transmission station. So hopefully the player characters will be able to shut all that equipment down before Hastalik can reform. Now, meanwhile, the Italian government is going to be sending in some attack helicopters and enacting their plan for just such an event, something that they never wanted to do. So a pair of jet fighters come streaking in and firebombing the entire site. Now, the player characters are going to be killed here unless they can escape this island in time, and there's a couple boats that are stashed on either shore in order for them to do this. Now, this ending that we have with the military enacting their Innsmouth initiative, it's really cool and it's really cinematic. I love the art that they gave it. However, most of it is simply the players just kind of watching all this happen instead of doing anything active in it other than just trying to run away. So my big suggestion here is to change it so that the players can have a bit of more of an active role in destroying Hastalik. So first, in addition to the revolver that's got 5 remaining shots, I say that you have it where somewhere in here the player characters might discover a single hand grenade, something that was left over from the raid of 54, so maybe in the hospital or maybe down in the crypt. And then they can use that hand grenade to maybe attack him while he's still forming, buy them a little bit of extra time. Or, as he's standing on one side of the bridge and he begins kind of turning into flies and pouring himself into this Wi-Fi repeater, they can pull the pin and throw it across and blow the repeater up and trap him within this island. Next, as I mentioned earlier, have multiple Elder Signs around this island, a measure that the government did to contain Hastalik within here. So maybe you could say that one of those Elder Signs has been broken, like maybe vandals did it or was located on the cliff's edge and that cliff has since collapsed or something like that. So Hastalik, he senses that there's an opening, a way that he can escape this island, and that way he can get to sea, because his goal is he wants to reach the water where he then is going to break apart into trillions and trillions of microbes and infect the ocean and destroy all life on Earth. Then when the helicopters and the planes arrive, Hastalik just takes them out. Maybe the pilots see him and they go insane, or maybe he summons these huge swarms of flies or different things like that then surge towards these aircraft and they splatter the windshields up or they clog the air intake. So now you've got aircraft that are falling from the skies and exploding as the player characters are trying to get away. Then the Italian government, because they actually are kind of wired into all of this, they message the heroes directly saying that Hastalik cannot reach the water under any circumstances, and they are preparing some sort of artillery bombardment of this island in order to destroy him with fire, but they need the player characters to stall this elder god / kaiju just a little bit longer before it can reach the sea, because it's up to them to save the world. So the player characters, maybe they can try to get Hastalik to chase them around this island a bit, or maybe you could have some old drums of diesel fuel or something that they found in a shed, or maybe washed up on shore, so maybe the player characters can try to get him to these drums or those drums to him, that way they can burn him up. Holy crap, the mines! The what? The old sea mines. That sketchy boat captain told us how there were all these mines around the island, right? Yeah, of course, those things are out in the water, but the module stated how the water is receding away from the island, leaving this huge muddy shore that the player characters would have to go racing down. So what if one of those mines is now just lying in the mud, fully exposed? So the player characters, they can get on one side of it and try to draw Hastalik towards him. Then he's going to hit that mine and kablooey. Now, it's probably not going to be enough to actually kill him, just break him apart, and he's going to have to take a couple minutes reforming. But that might not have enough time for the Italian military to hit that thing with some firebombs, and hopefully enough time for the player characters to get out of the blast zone. Hell yeah, that is a great way of using that, because we foreshadowed it at the very beginning of the adventure when we arrived on the island, so now everything kind of comes full circle. I dig it. Overall, I really enjoyed this adventure. We had an absolute blast playing it, and most of my criticisms are really more about making a good thing better than they are about actual complaints. I absolutely love all the built-in ways and tips that keepers have that they can manage to tempt the investigators and using modern technology against them and driving the story. I am absolutely in love with this aspect of the game. You can pick up a copy on DriveThruRPG. I've got links below. If you're looking for a fun, one-shot adventure with interesting player characters and really embraces the modern setting, I suggest checking Viral out.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews, RPG philosophy, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, Ghost Hunters, you have a great day. You know what the worst part of all this was for me? It wasn't losing my friends, or losing my sanity, or spending months in freaking quarantine because they were worried about what we got while also enduring so many interrogations. Nah, the worst part of all that was that the Italian government said that it was our fault that Hastalik woke up, meaning that we were financially responsible for them having to come and save our asses. Do you have any idea how much jet fuel and firebombs cost? You don't want to know.
Remember to go to audibletrial.com/Skorkowski for a free audiobook and a 30-day trial of Audible. Links below.